I think the internet has a huge problem. A huge problem. And this huge problem is partially due to its incredible success. Let me backtrack a little bit. So, if you could remember, and I'm not sure if you'd be old enough to remember, the days before internet, where we were before internet. There was no interconnectivity between individuals. There was no massive web of connectivity between individual people. The only people who could broadcast messages to a lot of people were a small number of individuals who had access to the media, radio stations, television, movies. A small cadre of human beings basically broadcast messages to everyone. And there really wasn't anything that the rest of us could do. We couldn't do anything. If we wanted to get our message out, we would have to somehow get one of these people in the cadre of broadcasters to take this message and send it out. That's why we used to have things like letters to the editor. We would send even emails. We would send emails to radio stations, news outlets, newspapers, and TV stations, and saying, hey, this is my opinion. And sometimes they would print it, sometimes they would talk about it, and sometimes they wouldn't. It was all up to there. It was this little cadre of, and when I say little cadre, I mean there were hundreds of thousands of people in those industries. But I say it's a little cadre because if you compare it against the entirety of the planet, the entirety of human race, the 7 billion people or 6 billion people or however many billions of people there were at the time, there maybe were, say, 1 million people tops in broadcast media everywhere around the world. Newspapers, radio, magazines, everything that could get a message out from this small cadre to everybody else. That was the world before the internet. It was extremely small number of people broadcasting messages to an extremely large number of people. And then when the internet first came out, it was the most amazing thing about it is, if you ask me, was the potential to not just have the small cadre of individuals in the broadcast media industries. And remember, I'm talking about all kinds of media. I'm talking about radio, television, newspapers, movies, all of these different broadcast media, magazines, etc. We would break up that coalition. We would break up that cadre because it allowed every human being, and this is my original promise that I think was the original promise of the internet, was that it would allow, once the internet got to you, of course, it took a while for the internet to get to some people. And there's still plenty of places in the world where they have no internet or spotty internet. But at the beginning, there was no internet. Nobody could talk to anybody. The only people who could talk were the broadcasters out to the masses. But once the internet became more widespread, any human being could talk to any human being. And that's where I always thought the true power of the internet lie, is in complete person-to-person communications. Anybody on the planet can speak to anybody else on the planet. And that was the original promise of the internet. Because once you were on it, you could literally connect to anybody else. Now, when it first came out, we still had that cadre of individuals who could broadcast, who were able to broadcast, because they needed to be a little more technical than your average human being in order to be able to broadcast to other people. So we had things like websites and blogs. So websites were the first thing that became sort of easy for people to get to. So you had a web browser, or you had AOL or one of those other services, and someone would set up a website, which is a destination to broadcast their message. And people could come and look at that website And if they knew how to get to the website, great. If they didn't know how to get to the website, then there were directories like Yahoo or search engines like AltaVista that would help you to get to that website. But it was still sort of a one-way conversation. You had the people who had the websites, and you had the readers of the websites. Even though these people who created websites were regular people, they weren't from the cadre of broadcasters, it still required them to have a lot more technical information to be able to set up a website. And then came blogs. Blogs were extremely easy ways for individuals to create their own websites. Any individual could create sort of an online diary and put their thoughts into this online diary. And this online diary would be available to everyone in the world. Anybody who knew how to get to this online diary, to this blog, would be able to get the output of this human being. So you had, with the advent of blogs, we saw an explosion, a democratization of connectivity. Because these individuals who were originally before, it was very difficult for them to actually get their message out to the world, suddenly had a way to get their message out to the world. But the only way to find these things was through some type of intermediary. So unless you knew how to get to somebody's website, you would have to find some way to be guided to that website. And that's, again, where directories and search engines came from. So search engines were designed to search the web, to index the web, all of these websites out there that were created by individuals and corporations, and allow you to find them. That was the main reason why search engines and directories were created, were to find those sites on the internet where people and corporations created content. So that was the first democratization. The first democratization was blogs. The second democratization was podcasts. People were able to create audio, basically like radio programs, and upload them to a site so that other people could download them and listen to them. It was democratizing radio. So if you think about blogs as democratizing print media, podcasts were democratizing radio. And then right around the same time, YouTube was launched, which blew them both out of the water and democratized video, which of course is the closest thing to actual human communication, right? Because if you think about human communication, either two people or multiple individuals talking to each other, having a conversation, right? And we're standing in front of each other, we're looking at each other, we can see each other, we can hear each other. So we're having a conversation as if we're standing in front of each other. And that is the thing that YouTube democratized. It allowed any human being to create a video and post it on the internet, and any other human being could come along and look at that video and watch that video. Not in real time, mind you, but they could watch it in real time. So we had the original broadcast media cadre of these tiny set of individuals who were able to put their message out to the world, broken up by blogs, podcasts, and videos that were created by different companies to allow this democratization to occur. And once this democratization occurred, it was amazing, because it literally was the internet talking to the internet, people to people communication, which, if you ask me, is the original most amazing thing about it. And if you ask me, one of the most amazing things, one of the things about humanity is that we all, I think, generally want the same things in life. We just have different ways of going about it. And one of the main reasons why we maybe have animosity towards others is that we don't know enough about them. Because there's barriers to communications between individuals. And first, the barriers to communications were physical, like there was no way anybody could communicate with anybody else. But with the internet, with blogs, with podcasts, with videos, any human being can communicate to any other human being. And if the search engines were working properly, any human being could could find the communications of other human beings anytime they wanted. Now the problem is that when you get to a certain size of communications, and then of course let's talk about things like one-to-one chats, like ICQ and Slack and things like that. So there's those types of things, Telegram, etc. We have one-to-one communications. And then you have all sorts of other types of communications like social media, which came in around 2008. And social media allowed people to also communicate and also connect to each other. So these were all platforms of communication which enabled true person-to-person communication. Any individual on the planet, as long as they were on the internet, could communicate with every other individual on the planet, supposing they found each other through these intermediary search engines, social networks, directories, what have you. So there was a period of time where it wasn't quite the Wild West, but it was sort of like an organized Wild West, where all of these different services actually did a really good job trying to get this person A to connect to person B and vice versa. It was almost like their mandate or their overriding vision was literally the ability to connect every person to every other person. The original, if you ask me, amazing purpose of the internet. And that lasted, I don't know, maybe about a year or two. But then what happened was intermediaries stepped in between these humans. And control was placed between these humans. So the control that was there before through physical, only a small cadre of broadcasters could get the word out, that same level of control now passed to search engines, social media, directories, because these intermediaries could now control who saw what. Now, if you've been on Facebook for a long time, you'll have remembered that at the very beginning, you'd see all of your friends' updates when you were in Facebook. And then over time, you saw fewer and fewer of your friends' updates and fewer and more other updates, which may have nothing to do with you, or you may be interested and you may not be interested in. The algorithms now control the communications between these people. So the person-to-person communication is now through these intermediaries. And the intermediaries are Facebook, Google, YouTube. All these intermediaries are the ones that now control the communications between individuals. And these intermediaries have various agendas, right? Some of the agenda is to make money. They figure not only are we going to show your friends in the friends list, we're going to pepper you with ads because people are paying us to put these ads in the stream. So they're perturbing the communications, the person-to-person communications, the original super value of the internet. They're peppering it with these ads, and the intermediaries are controlling the communications between these individuals. It's no longer person to person. It's now person A may or may not hear from person B, depending on what the intermediaries want to do. And of course, once they had the control to be able to make money out of it, they were able to control it politically. So if you were saying something that was maybe not copacetically political or politically copacetic, then they had the right to mute you and not let your message go out to other people. And that's one of the reasons why I was so impressed with Twitter at the very beginning, because Twitter was a medium that allowed everyone to communicate with everyone. And the key piece of it is that you didn't even need to be on the internet. As long as you had SMS on your phone, you could send a tweet via SMS. So if you were in a war zone and you wanted to do some citizen journalism and talk about the attacks that were just occurring, you could send an SMS up to Twitter and it would spread to others. You could actually get the message out as a human being. You're not a credentialed reporter. You're not part of the cadre of broadcasters. You're an actual human being who is seeing something that should be sent to the world. You were trying to communicate all of this to the world. And that was the beauty of Twitter at the beginning, was that it was literally, as long as you could get onto it, the ability for any human being to speak to any other human being. And then at the same time as everything else, everything got political. Intermediaries and blocks were set up between these individuals on the internet. So what do? We continuously move from platform to platform, trying to find a platform where we can have individuals talking directly to individuals. So that's why you see new platforms like Rumble come up, like Telegram, like Truth Social, any of these others. I mean, there's so many. I mean, Blue Sky, I forget the names of them all because there's so many of them out there. Because we've created this new internet where not every human being can talk to every human being. In fact, good luck trying to find human beings to talk to who are similar to who tell a message that you want to hear. Because the intermediaries control everything in between person A and person B. And this is what we need to do to fix. This is what we need to fix. We need to go back to the days where the internet was truly person to person, where every human being on the internet could communicate directly with any other human being on the internet without state control, without intermediaries, without any of this stuff in between. Because once we can open the lines of communication from any human being to any other human being, without censorship, without intermediaries, without politics, without muting one person because you don't happen to like the message that they're putting out, once we get to that, then it's almost like we're going to evolve into a brand new kind of being. Because we can see that almost every other person on the planet is just like us. And the reason we believe that those people are not like us is that we've been told that these people are not like us by people who want to divide us. They want to split us up. They want to create tribes between us and pit us against each other so that they can control us better. It's the states, it's intermediaries, it's tech companies, it's all of these. There's many of the organizations who want to do that. They're trying to keep us divided instead of helping us unite with each other. I don't know you. I don't know you very well. You may be one of my friends. You may be one of my relatives. But I don't know who I'm talking to right now. I don't know who this message is going to. And I don't even know if you can see this message because some intermediary might decide that this is an inconvenient message and we don't want it going out there. But I'll bet you anything. There's so many things. There's probably more things about us that are alike than are different. There's probably more things that we aspire to that are similar, that are different, than are different. We can probably, if we ever got together and sat down and had a beer or a coffee or a tea in a bar or a restaurant or a coffee shop or in a library or in a meetup, I bet you we would get along great. Even if we had completely different political leanings and affiliations. I bet you we would get along great because at the core of it, I think most human beings want the same things. We've just been separated into these tribes by these systems that want to keep us divided. They want to keep us fighting against each other. That's why it's so important for us to find a medium where we can communicate with each other directly and be who we are. Unite instead of divide. I think that's one of the things that we really need to hone in on as a skill, is checking to see if this communication, if what you're reading is coming from somebody who wants to divide us or someone who wants to unite us. I think we all need to work together to try and bring back the person-to-person internet again, to connect each individual to every other individual on the planet without the intermediaries telling us what we can and cannot say. What are your thoughts on this? Do you want something like this? Would you like every human being to be able to communicate with every human being? Or do you think it's a bad idea for human beings to be able to communicate with each other, especially if they're on opposite sides of a conflict? If you ask me, more communication is always better. Remember, the future is bright if we do it right. That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.